Well, staying with our photography theme, the Seattle Times runs a Sunday column titled Now and Then, a visual and written history that documents the changing face of Seattle from its earliest days. A selection of those columns have been compiled into a beautiful hardcover book called Seattle Now and Then, the Historic 100. Here to talk all about it are the creators themselves, Seattle public historian Paul Dorpat and Mr. Jean Sherrard. Hi, you two.
Hi.
Well, congratulations on the book. It's
We're
quite
old
the
fans
accomplishment.
of yours, Nancy.
Well, and right back at you, sir.
Oh, no, not as much, though.
Okay, so first of all, for anyone who, if there's anyone who's never seen the column, and I don't believe there is in Seattle, but describe the Now and Then column kind of in a nutshell. What is it?
Well, Paul started this column 37 years ago.
Yes.
And it is now totaling more than 1,800 different representations of the city. And for the most part, he hasn't repeated any photos.
One.
Well, that's...
One.
Wow.
It's been his principle never to repeat a photo. So,
But I found out when I repeated it later on. I didn't know it at the time.
Yeah? Someone told you?
But I wrote a completely different thing about it the second time.
Well-
But both were true.
Well, there you go.
Both are
There's
true.
more than one story. There's always more than one story.
That's it. And you came up with the principle. That's it.
There's always more than one
Thank you
story.
to you,
So the then photo of what something was, and then the now photo. So you had 1,800, and you had to choose 100 of those for this book.
We
How
chose
did
100
how
of
did you? What was the process of choosing?
I have an answer for that.
Let's hear it.
Even
I'll
though
throw
he's
it to you,
supposed to
Paul.
be on, I asked
Yeah.
if Gene would do it on his own, which he did because he had good taste.
Yeah.
And also it gave him the opportunity to find stories that he really was excited about repeating with glorious contemporary photos, which he did.
So Seattle has changed so much. How do you take your photographs so that when the viewer is looking at the before and after images, right, side by side, that they immediately know that they're looking at the same location?
you can't.
Right.
The city's changed too much.
Yes.
There are locations that we can look across and say, oh yeah, that's there, that's there. There's the Where's Waldo moment.
Yes.
But as often as not, we find that the landscape is altered so profoundly that what we're looking at is something that Paul calls an ironic view of the city. In the book, I look across at an old tennis match from the 1890s on Capitol Hill, and what was there until last October was a McDonald's parking lot, so you could still see the view. But what's there now is the wall of a condo. So if I tried to reshoot it today, it's gone. So last October I went out and shot the construction. So I'd get that final view with the buildings rising up below it and the loss of that vista. So,
Hey, Paul, so 37 years of doing this, what originally sparked your interest in documenting the heritage and the history of Seattle? Why did you want to do that?
I think it in part has something to do with the suggestion of a friend of mine that the Seattle Arts Commission was giving grants to people for ideas.
Nice.
So part of it was just survival. And one of the things I got was to do a history of Seattle, which I never did.
You never did it?
No.
Well, you've been
Well,
doing it now
well,
for
I
37 years.
I
essentially.
studied it a lot,
Yeah,
you know, and
yeah.
sure, I built up an archive and did a lot of publishing, but I never made that
particular,
film. Yeah,
okay,
no.
that particular film.
Well, I guess I did, didn't I? I made the Seattle Chronicle.
You did?
Yeah.
Do you have a particular favorite, either of you, in the column?
That's
If
the
you-
old...
Just in the moment now, in
I
the
didn't say a
moment.
word. I do.
What is it?
My favorite right now comes with a little story, and it's the shot of whom the settlers named Princess Angeline, Chief Seattle's daughter, Kiki Soblu. And there's a famous shot of her in mid-90s, 1890s, near the end of her life, looking at the photographer down what is now Post Alley. So we went back there this spring and we took along 2 subjects, and they were both direct descendants of Princess Angeline, Chief Seattle. Ken Workman, and he's like great, 4, 5 greats down, but he's direct from Seattle. And Mary Lou Slaughter, who is also another 4 greats down from Kiki Soblu. And as we took this photo, Ken turned around several times. The street was empty behind him, Post Alley was empty, and he turned around And Clay, who was there as well, and I were watching this happen, and we couldn't figure out what was wrong. It was like he'd been bitten. And finally, we asked him later, what was going on, Ken? He said, I kept feeling a pat on the elbow. And he patted me like this. As a photographer who finds that moment when I slot into place and when I actually do have the photo in my sights that was taken 100 years ago and can see it, I know about that pat. For me, it's metaphysical. There's a moment where the past is reached out and
kind of comment there. Things are kind of crossing over.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and so that's, for me, that's become one of my favorite moments in the book, and we just shot it in the spring. So.
Oh, nice. Yeah, yeah.
Phew. Well, I never heard that said so eloquently before. Could I just borrow it?
Yes, it's yours.
Right,
You can take that one.
I'll take that one, all right.
Do you think about the photos that you've taken, the now photos, that in a future Seattleite's going to use that as a then to compare, like another book 100
What a
years?
strong sense of irony she has.
Wow.
Do you ever think about that?
Oh, yeah, occasionally.
Because we are too going to become historic.
No,
Never thought of that.
Already, Paul's first photos, and we were tempted to do this, is that Paul's first repeats of these old photos from 1982 and 83 and 84, it's then, and now.
Wow.
Yeah, there's one on 6th and Madison, which is repeated 4 times.
Wow.
Largely because a friend, Lawton Galley, who long since deceased, took a lot of pictures at that corner because he knew they were building the freeway.
Oh,
And also because he was a Presbyterian.
Oh, and
And
is there
that's where the Presbyterian church is.
right. You guys, finally, what do you hope that readers will take away from your book? What would you?
Ooh,
The legacy.
Can I start?
Well, you certainly can, and I'll
Okay.
just copy you.
All right. I guess what I'd say is, we live in a city that's changing more rapidly and has over the last 5 years changed so rapidly that we're losing great swaths of it. We're losing our bearings. So for me, it's actually, we need a touchstone. We need to know texture and depth, and it gives us a sense of place and understanding of where we came from.
Well, you guys, it's just a great.
You like it?
I do, very much so. Yeah. It's great. In fact, I'm going to buy one for my mom and dad for Christmas. I hope they're not watching. So anyway, thank you so much for coming by. Seattle Now and Then, the Historic 100 is available at local bookstores and online. Get a personally signed copy through pauldorpat.com. Also, the formal book launch happens Sunday, October 28th at the Downtown Public Library, which also happens to be Paul Dorpat's 80th birthday. Cue the cake.
Oh, wow.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. We can all sing. Happy birthday, dear Paul Dorpat. Happy birthday to you. Thanks, you guys. Thank you so much.
You guys,
you got to blow it out now.
except isn't that the danger part of the...
No, go for it.
Just
We'll
do it.
live.
Yeah, just don't.
All right, here we go.
Don't do a lot of weirdness. Yes.
Okay.
Yay!
In for the assist.
He's always helping, always helping.
He's always a helper.
Yeah.
That was great, you guys. It was fabulous.
Thank you, Nancy.